Hey guys, Katrina Strinskaya is here, and I'm so excited today to be speaking with Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin. Dr. Nina is internationally recognized as a thought leader of eating psychology. And if you are or somebody you know is struggling with eating disorders, binge eating, overeating, maybe starving yourself, please contact Dr. Nina. Check out her website www.winthedietwar.com. And with no further ado, Dr. Nina.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. So you just mentioned, Dr. Nina, that you consult both as men and women, and I'm really curious, what is the ratio? Because I have never met men struggling with binge eating and overeating. So, is it the same psycho problems like for men and women?
I, I think that the ratio probably is the same, but a lot of men don't want to come in and get help. They think that it's, as you just sort of put it, they think it's a chick thing, as one guy said, oh, that's a chick thing. But actually it's a human thing because it's a way of managing something inside. And people have feelings and have conflicts and learn to express them in different ways. So yeah, I think men it's just as prevalent. They're just not coming forward, although they're starting to come forward more and more.
Mm-hmm. And what is the main reason lies behind binge eating, overeating, compulsive eating?
Well, I like to say, people say, oh, Dr. Nina, what's it like to treat eating disorders? And I say, I don't treat eating disorders, I treat people, and people develop eating disorders for all kinds of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are a myriad of different reasons why people engage in this behavior, but the bottom line is it's kind of a frenemy. It's a friend as well as an enemy. It's a way of coping with something inside.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always about trying to resolve a psychological problem or conflict or emotion through an action.
Great.
And
Do you
that may
have?
be different for different
Mm-hmm.
people.
Did you find some common trend, maybe for women especially, that most of them tend to overeating due to failure in relationships or in career? What is the biggest
It's
reason?
it's I can't I wish I could answer that because
Different.
it would be make life easier for
Uh-huh.
all people if there was one answer, but there is no one answer. It's always different for each person, and that's why each person that comes in or each person that maybe works on my
Mm-hmm.
programs, it's it's up to them to kind of discover why. You have to be a detective, like, okay, what's the particular reason for that person? Why are they engaging in that behavior? And it's
Right.
different for some people. It's loneliness. Loneliness can register as
Yeah.
emptiness, which you fill up with food symbolically. For other people, eat until, I've heard people say, oh, I ate until my stomach hurt, I was in pain. And for them, they may be converting emotional pain. Their feelings are hurt or something's hurting them, they convert it into physical pain. So,
Mm-hmm.
because emotional pain is hard to deal with, physical pain from eating too much goes away. So, there are all different reasons. Some people eat for comfort, some people eat because, say, they're angry, but especially women, this is very true of women. Women have a hard time with anger because we're told, oh, girls aren't angry, that's not nice, all of those messages.
Yeah.
Guys are told, don't cry. Girls are told, don't get mad. And so what I see a lot is people who something will happen in their
Mm-hmm.
lives and they'll get really mad. And then instead of talking about that thing, they'll come in and say, oh, I was so mad at myself for eating pizza.
Mm-hmm.
So they direct their true feelings towards someone else at themselves by eating. So it's always different for everybody and for each person at different times.
Mm-hmm. And you just mentioned that people start working with you or your programs. What kind of programs do you have?
Well, right now I have winthedietwar.com and everything is free. I have a podcast called uh, Win the Diet War with Dr. Nina, and I have the Dr. Nina Show on YouTube, and I have the Make Peace with Food blog. It's hard to say. And then I'm going to be launching more interactive online programs where people can sort of opt in and get more one-on-one guidance.
That's fantastic, especially if they can try it for free first and then see if it for themselves if it's a good fit.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's so much misinformation because a lot of people think that the problem is the overeating, the compulsive eating, the binge eating, and that's actually a symptom of the problem, not the problem. It's like a weed and a root. If you just, take a weed out, it's going to grow back. You've got to get to the root, which is what's underground. And in people, it's what's unconscious. It might be out of awareness, but not out of operation. So we seek to find out, well, what's really going on in the dark that's growing these weeds, this behavior.
Absolutely. And as I understand, you had some kind of eating disorders yourself. That's why you came up with your program. Would you tell us more, please?
Well, I would be happy to. I'm very candid about this because I really think that it's helpful for people to know not only do I treat this clinically as a psychoanalyst, but I know what it feels like to be struggling with it. And I know that you can overcome it and that there is hope. So when I was 5 years old, I suddenly randomly decided that I was fat. And I wasn't fat. I decided my legs were fat. And if only my legs were thinner, life would be better. I was 5 years old. I wasn't reading magazines. I wasn't watching TV. There was nothing about body image or anything that was affecting me. And this started a cycle that later became a sort of a cycle of anorexia and bulimia and binge eating. And I would just go through this cycle of restricting and starving and binging and purging and binging, and just it would go around and around until college. And I finally went to therapy. But here's the thing. I did not tell my therapist what was going on with food, not once. And I went to her for 3 years, once a week. I talked about my relationships. I talked about guys, parents, school, all those things. Never once did I talk about anything to do with food and eating disorders. And at the end of that 3 years, my eating disorders were gone.
Wow.
Gone. And I realized it was never about what I thought it was about. And I didn't talk to her about it because I was too ashamed. It was just too humiliating to talk to anyone about it.
Yeah.
And so I realized, wow, it was never about what I was eating. It was about what was eating at me, right? It was about bothering me that was getting expressed with this behavior. And so that was a really pivotal time in my life, and I really wanted to help other people who were struggling and help them understand it in a different way.
Wow, that's interesting. Have you noticed the relationship between foods and different emotions when people overeat?
Well, it's funny that you should say that because I have. I have this very anecdotal, very non-scientific ideas about relationship between what you're eating and what's going on inside. Because a lot of people say, I have no idea what's going on inside because they go right to food to distract from what's going on inside. So here's what I've basically noticed, that when people are seeking like smooth, creamy food like ice cream or pudding or anything smooth, they really want comfort. Because everyone sort of has a go-to food when they binge. And when people want like pizza or pasta or cakes or breads, anything that's really filling and bulky, that's associated with filling a void, loneliness, emptiness, kind of a sense of yearning. And anything with a crunch, like chips or whatever, like that is associated with anger. And again, totally unscientific, but absolutely almost to a person exactly right. So I often help people realize, okay, you may not know what's going on inside, but you're an ice cream person. That would indicate that maybe you need comfort. So let's find a different way for you to get that comfort other than ice cream.
Yeah, I can relate. I think it's so true. Yeah, all these foods. And interesting, because after I became basically vegan, I started creating vegan ice creams when I feel like I need comfort. So
right.
yeah, same
There you
pattern.
go. Yeah.
Interesting. Dr. Nina, I also have heard that you told once your daughter that she can eat as many candies as she likes for Halloween. What was that about?
Yeah, people think I encourage my daughter to binge on Halloween candy, but actually it's the reverse. Because deprivation, or the anticipation of deprivation, leads to binging. So the example is that my daughter had a friend, let's call her Lisa, and Lisa's parents said, you can only have 2 pieces of candy on Halloween and 2 pieces of candy every day thereafter. They totally restricted her. So of course, she wanted Halloween candy. And she came to our house, where, I'll get to it later, where my thing was, you know what, it's Halloween, have as much as you want. My daughter, knowing she could have as much as she want, had like 3 or 4 pieces, and then she knew she could have it, so she didn't want it. She knew when she was done. Lisa came over, and because she was told 2 pieces, she must have, I don't even know how she ate, but she got sick. So you can't regulate yourself if you're told you can't have something, because what happens when you're told, oh, you can't have that? You want it, right? You want more of it.
Wow,
So that's why.
Yeah, that's interesting. And also, when people are addicted to something, it's not just food, but it could be even shopping, or sometimes it's over exercising or drinking, all kinds of addictions. What do you think is the tendency to all of those addictions?
Well, and there's a difference between, I don't really use the term addiction for myself, but I think it's important to make a distinction between a process addiction and a substance addiction. So a substance addiction is drugs and alcohol, and it's to the actual substance. A process addiction, a behavioral addiction, is to the behavior of something that brings about distraction from what's bothering you. But to answer your question, I believe that there's a problem in our culture that says, don't feel anything, right? Feelings are bad. You're strong if you don't feel anything. Our culture says, if you're angry, take an anger management class. You know, if you're sad, oh, you're depressed, take a pill. If you're anxious, there's a pill for that too. Even if you're happy, it's like, oh, maybe you're too happy. Are you are you manic? Right? So we get all these messages that feelings are bad and don't feel them. And because of that, people don't know what to do when they start having human reactions. Feelings are reactions to situations. And so they use all different ways of coping because they don't know how to nurture themselves, comfort themselves, talk to themselves, process what's going on inside.
Wow, that's interesting. How long have you been in practice helping people with overeating?
12 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And on average, or there is maybe no average, how long it takes for a person to change their behaviors, to find out the root cause and change that?
Well, finding it out and changing it are 2 separate things, right? So I tell people that it takes often 3 to 6 months before they start seeing changes. But often those changes are not to do with food. Their changes are to do with their relationship to themselves, to recognizing what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They start speaking up for themselves, standing up for themselves. And that's the beginning of learning how to relate to themselves differently, which eventually does change how they are with food. But one woman said to me, I've been going to therapy. She was in my group. She wasn't someone I saw. She just came to my group, and she said, I've been going for a whole year. And she was in her 50s. She said, I've been going to therapy for a year, and I am still binging. And I said, you're 55 years old. You've been dealing with this your whole life. Once a week in therapy is basically, with a couple of weeks off for holidays, 50 hours that you've addressed this. 2 days cumulatively. So it does take longer than people, would like. I have a magic wand in my office, and I like to wave it. And someone once told me, that wand does work, just very slowly. But what I help people do is not just deal with the problem, but eliminate the problem. That takes time to do that emotional gardening and get rid of the root.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you work with people over the phone, Skype, or just in person?
Well, just in person in my private practice
And you're based in Los Angeles, right?
in LA. Yeah, yeah.
Great. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way to find you?
The best way to find me is my website, winthedietwar.com. They can access my podcast, my video series, my blog through that. There's a number they can call me and they can email me. And I answer all my emails. Then they can find me on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media too.
So if somebody is out of town, how would they be able to work with you? They can fly in for a consultation, and then is there something they can do at home, or how would that
Well,
work?
this is why I have a book coming out next year about sort of a psychoanalytic self-help so that they can have me in their minds. And I have like a video program that's coming out next year where it's sort of like it's not one-on-one because lots of people can access the videos, but I help guide people. I'm going to help guide people into the steps to identifying what's going on, figuring out their particular individual reasons for why they have this disrupted relationship to food, and then how to heal it.
That's amazing. Do you have a name for your book, a title already?
Win the Diet War.
Oh, that's great. That becomes like your,
Win the Diet War.
that's your trademark now. Everything is,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And do you have any kind of other recommendations for them? I mean, sources, your blogs, maybe some books, something to start working on their eating disorders?
I have to say that I hear all the time, and I hear this from people all over the world. They write me and they say, no one has ever talked to me about this in this way. No one has ever presented this in this way. And because I'm a psychoanalyst, which really deals with which people think that's Freud and all that. It's not Freud. It's really recognizing, on a much deeper level, what's going on inside and why. And unless you're trained psychoanalyst who's doing this work, you're not going to be able, you're not going to be able to address it this way. So that's why I created all my free things. I don't know, 12 or 14 videos, and I have a lot of stuff for free that people can watch. They can listen to my podcast, and that I give them food for thought. Amazing. I will say, think about this, ask yourself this question, this question, this question. And people write me all the time, and they say, I've been listening, I've been watching, and I feel transformed. And that is just so gratifying to me, because this is my passion, is to really help people understand themselves and mitigate the shame that comes from dealing with this.
Absolutely. Do you have some words of wisdom to guys? Because as we just mentioned, guys don't want to admit, they think it's a female's disorder, so they just hide. How can they get help?
Well, this guy, actually, John Buchanan, he has a podcast called Let's Reverse Obesity, and he had me on the show, and I was talking about this connection between feelings and behavior with food, and he said, well, wait a minute, feelings are for women. He said, I'm a dude. I don't have feelings. And I said, well, dude, you're also human, and human beings have feelings. Yeah. And I would remind guys out there that they've gotten a lot of messages that it's not masculine to feel things. It's not masculine to cry or feel vulnerable feelings. They're told it's okay to be mad, and that's it, essentially. And I would say, guys, embrace your humanity. You are just a person in pain or a person who's feeling something. And I have to tell you, as a woman, and with most of my friends, I find that appealing when a man can be in touch with his feelings and his humanity.
Absolutely.
So that's what I would say. It's sexy to feel your feelings, guys. Go for it.
That's awesome. And a few words of wisdom for women. If somebody feels emotional and they're reaching their fridge and taking out ice creams and cookies, is there anything they can do? Maybe think about something else, anything to stop that?
I would say they could think about what I've just said, correlating certain foods to certain needs and wants and feelings, and then ask themselves, actually beforehand, ask themselves, okay, what else can I do when I need comfort? What do I really need? What does comfort really look like? What does it sound like? Often people have no language for how to say to themselves, oh, this hurts and this is going to get better. This is going to get better and it's hard right now, but I'm going to get through it. I have before. So what I often tell people is think about the way you talk to your friends, because I find that people talk to their friends in a very lovely way. And they'll say to their friends, oh, you're wonderful and this will pass and it's going to be okay. And I know this sucks, but it's all right. But they say to themselves, nothing, nothing. So treat yourself the way you treat a friend. Be a friend to yourself. And you'll see, probably, as long as you're a nice friend, and you'll see a big difference.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Nina. Is there anything else you would like to add, or you think we have covered main things?
I think we have. I also like to say, be curious, not critical, right? Because if you're critical and you're beating yourself up, you feel terrible. If you feel terrible, you're more vulnerable to using food or something else to deal with those feelings. But if you're curious and you say, if you're critical and you say, I can't believe I ate that ice cream. How could I have done that? I'm such a loser, right? Oh, you feel terrible. Then there comes more ice cream. But if you say, okay, I'm going to be curious. Why did I eat that ice cream? What was going on with me? When you ask yourself questions, you're more likely to find an answer. And then find answers, you find new ways of responding to yourself, because thoughts lead to feelings, lead to behavior. That's why dealing with the behavior is a waste of time. And you don't want to live with willpower. You don't want to be just like, I'm going to wake up today and be good. You want to be able to deal with this, so you wake up today and say, what am I going to do today that's fulfilling? And then lunch is lunch, not a battleground. And that's how you win the diet war.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Nina. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm through.